The dusty Texas road stretched endlessly before Alice Matthews as she gripped the steering wheel of her rental car, her knuckles white with tension. 8 years, 8 long years since she'd been forced to leave everything behind, her work, her passion, and most painfully, Miracle. The Lone Star Wildlife Reserve appeared on the horizon, its familiar wooden gates bringing a flood of memories that made her chest tighten. Alice pulled over and sat in the sweltering afternoon heat, staring at the place that had once been her entire world. "I can do this," she whispered to herself, checking her reflection in the rearview mirror. At 32, she looked older than her years, the weight of the past decade evident in the fine lines around her green eyes and the premature grey threading through her auburn hair. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister Rebecca. "Are you sure about this? It's been so long. What if he doesn't remember you?" Alice's throat constricted. The same question had haunted her during the 12-hour drive from Colorado. What if Miracle had forgotten her? What if the bond they shared had been nothing more than wishful thinking? She remembered the day she first found him, a tiny, malnourished cub abandoned near a roadside circus that had been shut down for animal cruelty. He was barely 2 months old, his ribs showing through patchy fur, his golden eyes dull with sickness and trauma. "Please don't die on me, little one," she had whispered that first night, feeding him formula through a bottle every 2 hours. She had been just 21 then, fresh out of college, with a degree in wildlife biology and dreams of making a difference. The reserve's owner, Martin Hendricks, had initially been skeptical. "Alice, you can't get attached. These animals aren't pets. Our job is to rehabilitate and relocate them when possible." But Miracle had been different. Born in captivity to a mother who rejected him, he had no survival instincts for the wild. Alice became his surrogate mother, teaching him to hunt with toys, to socialize with other big cats, and to trust humans who meant him no harm. For 3 years, they were inseparable. Alice would arrive at dawn and leave after sunset, documenting Miracle's growth, his behavioral patterns, his unique personality quirks. He would greet her with a rumbling purr that vibrated through his massive chest, nuzzle her face with surprising gentleness, and follow her around his enclosure like an oversized house cat. The reserve staff had never seen anything like their bond. Miracle, who was aggressive and unpredictable with everyone else, would become calm and playful the moment Alice appeared. She could enter his enclosure safely, something that would have been suicidal for anyone else to attempt. "He thinks you're his mother," Dr. Elena Rodriguez had observed. "It's remarkable, but also concerning. What happens when you can't be here anymore?" That question became reality sooner than anyone expected. The incident that changed everything happened on a humid September morning. A group of investors, hoping to buy the reserve and convert it into a hunting ranch, had arrived for an inspection. Despite clear protocols, one of them had approached Miracle's enclosure with a camera, ignoring Alice's warnings. Miracle, protective of his territory and Alice, had lunged at the fence with tremendous force. The 12-foot chain link held, but barely. The investor stumbled backward, falling and breaking his wrist. The incident triggered an investigation by state wildlife authorities. "I'm sorry, Alice," Martin had said, his voice heavy with regret. "The state is requiring enhanced safety protocols. No more direct contact with Miracle, and they're recommending you be reassigned to work with smaller animals only." Alice had refused. If she couldn't work with Miracle, she wouldn't work at the reserve at all. The decision had torn her heart in two, but she couldn't bear to see him every day, knowing she could never again share the connection that had defined both their lives. She had left Texas the next week, taking a position at a wildlife rehabilitation center in Colorado. For 8 years, she had thrown herself into her work with injured birds of prey and orphaned mountain lions, but nothing had filled the void that Miracle had left. Last month, Martin had called with news that changed everything. The reserve was facing closure due to funding issues, and they needed to relocate their animals. Miracle, now 11 years old and weighing over 400 pounds, was scheduled to be moved to a sanctuary in Florida. "He's not doing well, Alice," Martin had admitted. "He's been depressed since you left. Barely eats, doesn't interact with the other staff. I know it's been a long time, but would you consider coming back, just to help with the transition?" The request had awakened something Alice thought she had buried forever. Despite the risk, despite the pain of the past, she couldn't abandon Miracle when he needed her most. Now, sitting outside the reserve's gates, Alice felt the familiar mixture of anticipation and terror that always accompanied her thoughts of Miracle. 8 years was a lifetime for a big cat. Would he remember the young woman who had bottle-fed him, who had slept beside his enclosure when he was sick, who had loved him like her own child? Taking a deep breath, Alice started the car and drove through the gates, ready to face whatever awaited her beyond. Chapter 2. The Moment of Truth. Martin Hendricks emerged from the main building, his weathered face breaking into a smile as he saw Alice step out of her car. The 70-year-old reserve owner moved slower than she remembered, his once strong frame now bent with age and the weight of impending loss. "Alice," he said, his voice thick with emotion as he embraced her. "I wasn't sure you'd actually come." "Neither was I," Alice admitted, her eyes already scanning the familiar landscape of enclosures and walking paths. Everything looked smaller than in her memories, more worn down. The financial struggles were evident in the peeling paint and patched fencing. "How is he?" she asked, the question that had dominated her thoughts for the past month. Martin's expression grew somber. "See for yourself." "But Alice, prepare yourself. He's not the playful young lion you remember." They walked in silence toward the back section of the reserve, where the large predators were housed. Alice's heart pounded with each step, her palms sweating despite the late afternoon Texas heat. Other staff members they passed stared with curiosity. Most were new and had only heard legends about the woman who once had an impossible bond with their most dangerous resident. "The new staff thinks we're crazy for letting you near him," Martin confided. "They've seen what he's like with everyone else. Last month, he nearly took off Jake's arm when he got too close to the fence during feeding time." Alice's stomach lurched. "Is Jake okay?" 18 stitches, but he'll live. Miracle's aggression has gotten worse over the years. The vet thinks it's depression manifesting as territorial behavior. He's protecting a space he associates with you, even though you're not there." They reached the familiar enclosure, and Alice's breath caught. There, in the far corner, under the shade of an old oak tree, lay Miracle. Even from a distance, she could see he had grown magnificent. His mane was full and dark, his body powerfully built, every inch the apex predator he was meant to be. But something was wrong. His posture spoke of defeat, his golden eyes staring at nothing. The vibrant, curious animal she had known was gone, replaced by what looked like a living statue of grief. "He spends most days like that," Martin whispered. "Barely moves except to eat, and even then reluctantly. The Florida sanctuary is his last chance at a better life, but honestly, I'm not sure he'll survive the transition." Alice approached the fence slowly, her training overriding her emotions. "Never make sudden movements. Never show fear. Respect the power of the animal before you." "Miracle," she called softly. The lion's ears twitched, but he didn't move. Alice tried again, using the special sound she used to make when he was small, a low, rumbling hum that she had unconsciously copied from his mother's calls. This time, Miracle's head lifted. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the massive lion stared at Alice through the chain-link fence. His golden eyes, once so familiar, now seemed to look right through her. "He doesn't recognize me," Alice whispered, her heart breaking. 8 years had been too long. The bond she had treasured, the connection that had defined the best years of her life, was gone. But then Miracle stood, his movements deliberate and powerful. At 400 pounds, he was an imposing sight, his mane catching the late afternoon sunlight. He began walking toward the fence, his gait uncertain, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. "Alice, step back," Martin warned urgently. "He's been unpredictable lately." But Alice held her ground, watching as Miracle approached. When he was 10 feet away, he stopped, his nostrils flaring as he caught her scent. The recognition dawned slowly, his eyes widening, his body language shifting from wariness to something Alice couldn't quite identify. Then Miracle did something that made everyone present hold their breath. He made the sound he used to make as a cub, a chirping call that adult lions rarely produced. It was the sound he had made when he wanted Alice's attention, when he was happy to see her. "My God," Dr. Sarah Chen, the current veterinarian, breathed. "I've never heard him make that sound." Alice's eyes filled with tears. "Hey there, big guy," she said, her voice trembling. I know it's been too long." Miracle moved closer to the fence, his massive head tilting in the gesture Alice remembered so well. He was studying her face, confirming what his nose and ears had already told him. This was his Alice, his first friend, his protector who had disappeared without explanation so many years ago. The lion began pacing along the fence line, a behavior the staff had never seen before. He was agitated but not aggressive. It was more like excitement mixed with confusion. He would approach the fence, stare at Alice, then move away, only to return again. "He wants to touch you," Dr. Chen observed, "but he's confused by the barrier." Alice knew the feeling. Every instinct screamed at her to reach through the fence, to make physical contact, to reassure Miracle that she was real. But she also knew the danger. This wasn't the small cub she could cuddle and bottle feed. This was a fully grown male lion, apex predator, whose strength could kill her in seconds if something went wrong. The reunion protocol we've developed is very strict, Dr. Chen explained. No direct contact. We'll need to rebuild trust gradually through the fence, with multiple handlers present at all times. But as Alice watched Miracle's growing distress, she realized that clinical protocols might not be enough. The lion was becoming increasingly agitated, pacing faster, making sounds that seemed almost like crying. 8 years of separation, of not understanding why his most trusted human had abandoned him, was pouring out in a display of raw emotion that was heartbreaking to witness. "He's been waiting for you," Martin said quietly. "All this time, he's been waiting for you to come home." The weight of that realization hit Alice like a physical blow. While she had been trying to move on, to build a new life, Miracle had never stopped hoping for her return. The depression, the aggression, the withdrawal, it all made sense now. He hadn't just lost a caretaker, he had lost his family. As the sun began to set over the Texas landscape, Alice made a decision that would change everything. Chapter 3. The Unbreakable Bond. "Alice, absolutely not," Dr. Chen said firmly as Alice approached the enclosure gate. "I cannot allow direct contact. It's been 8 years. You don't know how he'll react." But Alice was already reaching for the lock mechanism, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to do. "He's suffering, Sarah. Look at him. The protocols aren't working because this isn't a normal situation." Miracle had positioned himself directly at the gate, his golden eyes locked onto Alice's face. His pacing had intensified, and he was making continuous vocalizations, sounds of distress that cut through everyone present, like a knife. "If something happens to you, we'll lose our license," Martin protested, though his voice lacked conviction. He too could see the profound emotional pain the lion was experiencing. "Martin, you've known me for over a decade. You've seen what Miracle and I had together. Trust me one more time," Alice pleaded, her hand resting on the gate lock. Jake Morrison, the keeper who had been injured the month before, stepped forward. His left arm was still bandaged, but his expression was thoughtful. "I've worked with big cats for 15 years, he said slowly. "I've never seen anything like what's happening right now. That lion he's grieving." Dr. Chen pulled out her phone. "I'm recording this. If we're going to break every safety protocol in the book, we need documentation." Her clinical training warred with what she was witnessing, an emotional reunion that defied everything she knew about wild animal behavior. Alice took a deep breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. "I'm coming in, Miracle. Easy, boy, easy." The lock clicked open, and Alice stepped into the enclosure that had once been her second home. Miracle immediately moved toward her, his massive form covering the distance in 3 powerful strides. For a terrifying moment, everyone held their breath as 400 pounds of apex predator approached the small woman who had dared to enter his domain. Then Miracle stopped, just arm's length away from Alice. His golden eyes searched her face, his nostrils flaring as he took in her scent. The recognition was complete now. This was his Alice, unchanged in all the ways that mattered to him. "I'm sorry," Alice whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry I left you." What happened next silenced every skeptic watching. Miracle lowered his massive head and gently pressed his forehead against Alice's chest. The same greeting he had given her as a cub, scaled up to his adult size. The gesture was so tender, so deliberate, that it took Alice's breath away. "Oh, my beautiful boy," she sobbed, raising her hands to either side of his great head. "I never wanted to leave you. Never." Miracle began to purr, a sound so deep and resonant that everyone could feel it vibrating through the ground. It was a sound he hadn't made in 8 years, a sound that spoke of contentment, of home, of love that had never died despite time and distance. Alice sank to her knees, and Miracle immediately lay down beside her, positioning himself so she could rest against his side, as she had done so many years ago. His purring intensified, and he began the gentle grooming behavior that lions use with their pride members, carefully licking Alice's hair with his rough tongue. "This is impossible," Dr. Chen whispered, still recording. "Adult male lions don't behave this way with humans. The aggression, the territorial instincts, it's like they just disappeared." "Love," Martin said simply, his own eyes wet with tears. "What we're seeing is pure love." For 30 minutes, Alice and Miracle remained in their bubble of reunion. She told him about the years apart, about the birds she had helped heal in Colorado, about how she had thought of him every single day. Miracle listened with the patience of a parent, occasionally nuzzling her face or adjusting his position to keep her comfortable. The staff watched in amazement as the depressed, aggressive lion they knew transformed back into the playful, gentle giant that Alice remembered. When she produced a tennis ball from her pocket, the same type of toy they had played with years before, Miracle's eyes lit up with joy. "You remember this game, don't you?" Alice laughed through her tears as Miracle batted the ball around with surprising gentleness for such a powerful creature. As the sun set completely and the reserve's lights came on, reality began to intrude on their perfect moment. Alice knew she couldn't stay in the enclosure indefinitely, and the question of Miracle's future still loomed over them. "The Florida Sanctuary," Alice said to Martin as she finally, reluctantly, prepared to leave the enclosure. What if I went with him? They need experienced big cat specialists, and I could." "Alice," Martin interrupted gently, "the sanctuary director is Dr. Rebecca Matthews. She's been hoping you'd call for years." Alice stared at him in shock. "Rebecca? My sister Rebecca?" Martin nodded, smiling. "She's been following your work in Colorado. When I told her about Miracle's situation, she immediately offered him a place, but only if you came too. She said, and I quote, 'Some bonds are too precious to break twice.'" As Alice processed this revelation, Miracle seemed to sense the conversation was about his future. He moved closer to the fence, watching Alice intently, as if asking her not to disappear again. "I won't leave you again," Alice promised, reaching through the fence to touch his massive paw. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." The video that Dr. Chen had recorded would eventually be seen by millions worldwide, a testament to the power of love to transcend species, time, and trauma. But for Alice and Miracle, the audience didn't matter. What mattered was the promise they made to each other in that moment, that some bonds are indeed unbreakable, surviving separation, doubt, and fear to emerge stronger than ever. As Alice finally left the enclosure, Miracle settled by the gate to wait for morning when his Alice would return. For the first time in 8 years, hope had returned to both their hearts, and tomorrow would be the beginning of their new life together.